What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, divorce coach, Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. We just jump right into it and give me a little bit of a background on yourself and what led you to where you are today with A.D.A.M.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So, I've been practicing divorce family law for, a good 25 years. And we represent only men. So that's been kind of a unique kind of side of what we do here at my law firm. And yeah, I got started. I mean, this, goes back all the way to my childhood, basically. My parents got divorced when I was a kid. I was 8 years old. And that's like kind of a big change. It's a big moment in your life. You don't really realize it at the time, but
Right.
It just has a big effect on, I think, how you see things and how you see people. And I kind of started feeling like the adults in my life weren't really in control anymore. Didn't really know what they're doing, which is probably a good life lesson, but maybe not at age 8,
Probably not.
Yeah. So that kind of opened my eyes to divorce, and, because this is the 70s. So this is not when divorce is really that prevalent. And you sort of start seeing things through that lens of, this.
I lost your audio.
Oh, did I just lose sound?
Yeah, I got you back there. I don't know what happened.
Let me see. Let me see here. Yeah, I can still hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you're fainter. I don't know if maybe your Bluetooth dropped off or something.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Let me see. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I could always switch out of that too. God, what's going on with this thing? I know it's charged up. Well, I can just go off ahead. I can just not use headphones. I don't have to have them.
Okay. Yeah, whatever works.
Yeah. Yeah, you can hear me okay. So we'll just do that.
Okay.
All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
So that kind of gave me this perspective that's helped me relate to men getting divorced and what they're going through. And I never got divorced myself, but I saw it as a child sees it. I saw it as their kids are seeing it. A lot of the guys we meet with have kids.
Sure.
So it just kind of gives you that extra relatable kind of thing when you're meeting with somebody of, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I have a sense of what your family's going through and what this is like. And, and we deal with it, of course, all the time, but
sure.
Seeing it from a personal side is certainly gives me some better perspective with men and with helping men and divorce and starting the whole process.
So at what point did you kind of know that you were going to go to law school? And at what point did you know it was going to be for divorce? Did that come on early in life or was it later?
I think it was always there. My dad was an attorney, so it's not like a big surprise, but I didn't really set out as a kid. As a kid, I would go to his law office with him and kind of tag around and follow, and see what he was doing and go to court with him and stuff.
Sure.
But I never really had that moment of like, oh, that's what I want to do. But, in college, I was all over the place. I started out in engineering. Then I ended up in business school, got a degree in finance and economics. And it really wasn't until like almost graduating college that I just said, I think I'm going to give this a try. Took the LSAT, went to law school. And then I still was really kind of floating at that point, adrift, not really sure what I was looking to do. And I took a family law, divorce and family law class in the summer at law school. And summer classes, first of all, are just way better because you can concentrate your full time on them. You don't have 5 other classes. And the family law stuff just really hit home with me, made sense to me. And I think that kind of connected at my second year in law school. I just started thinking, this is really something I think I want to do. And,
nice.
Found the right. Yeah.
What school did you go to?
I went to John Marshall Law School in Chicago. So it's like right downtown in the Loop.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a great city. Yeah, I lived in Chicago when I was a kid, so it kind of feels like a second home to me. It's where we were living until my parents got divorced. And but yeah, I think that was kind of the deal. And I found the right law firm. I got to A.D.A.M where I'm at now when I was young. I mean, I was like only a couple years out of law school when I found these guys. And that was it. I mean, from there, it just was like what I'd always wanted to do with my life.
So that's what at this point, you're solely divorced for men, and it's been that way since what, 1988? Is that the date I think I saw?
Yeah. The firm's been doing this since 1988. I started here in 99. And then my partner, John, and I took over. Our old boss retired pretty young, sold the law firm to us. And then we've been running this for, I don't know, I lose track, 10 years or so now. Okay. The years roar by. But yeah, so I've been here, I've been doing this exclusively since 99, so it's been a lot of years of seeing how it evolves. And, this is back to like the days of Yellow Pages ads and all that kind of stuff. And now it's a whole different world,
Yeah, for sure. I guess we can jump into some of the questions that I proposed first, which is just sort of advice, in terms of, we could, I chose top 3, we can do 4 or 5, but what are the top few things that you think are essential for men to do once they know divorce is coming?
Yeah. So once you know a divorce is coming, you want to be really getting a sense of what you got going on in your life. I mean, it's a good time to get advice. First of all, you want to get advice as early as possible. That always makes a big difference. But one of the concrete kind of things you can go with is filing first. There can be a lot of benefits to filing. We meet with lots of guys that don't even want the divorce, or sometimes they don't even know why the divorce is going on. But same advice to them. Get something filed before your wife does. There can be a lot of advantages no matter what state you're in. The plaintiff in our legal system is usually the victim. The victim is given the upper hand. They get the better spot in litigation. They get, if there's a court hearing, they get to go first. If there's a jury, they sit next to the jury. They're the one that is running the lawsuit and starting it, and the one that has something that they've been aggrieved, they need a remedy, the court's there to help them. So that's true also in divorce, even though there's not always a victim in a divorce. Just because you file first, now you're the plaintiff, now you have all those advantages. It's possible to get court orders signed without a hearing. So it's pretty typical to do a restraining order on property. They have different terms for them, but basically you get these ex parte orders signed, ex parte just meaning without a hearing. Right. So I file first, I can get a court order signed that says, kind of whatever I want. I can freeze somebody's bank account. I can do all sorts of things. If they're living apart, I can set up custody, parenting time, child support. I mean, it's nonsense what goes on. And when people say, oh, it doesn't matter who files first, I mean, that's shocking. And there's so many things that can grow from the fact that you filed first. So that's one thing to keep in mind is doing that.
Yeah, I wish I would have known that myself.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's one of those things that there's lawyers that I don't think really realize the advantages to it. They're just not looking at it through that lens, Yeah. And another one, especially if there's kids, which a lot of marriages, there's children, is not to move out. A big mistake guys will make at the beginning is they move out, their wife tells them to leave, or they're uncomfortable living together, and who's not uncomfortable living together at that point. Yeah. And they rush into this idea of, okay, I'm just going to take off, I'm gonna get my gym bag and leave. And there's really no plan. And all these problems grow from the fact that they moved out with no plan. They're having trouble seeing their kids. They don't know what's going on at the house. They don't know who's paying the bills, who's expected to pay the bill. They don't know what's going on. And you look back and you say, well, if you just would have stayed put for like a month till we worked some of this out, you'd be a whole different place. Gotcha. It'd be a lot better for you, Yeah. So that's another one is not that you need to stay put and drive each other crazy. Right. And of course, if there's domestic violence or something real extreme, you leave for the night, you leave. But this idea of moving out with no plan is just always a bad idea.
Gotcha.
The no plan being the bigger problem of that. But people can move out. We'll have guys who give them advice and they might move out in a couple of weeks, but we do it the right way. Gotcha. We get some ground rules, get a sense of what's expected, what I expect of you, what you expect of me. Right. If there's kids, what am I seeing? You got to work all that out. That's a common mistake that we'll see. And it's hard it becomes hard to fix later. Sometimes it's too late.
Yeah. What is
Um,
what is there, and I know it probably varies by state, but if you do move out, when is it a cutoff time to where it becomes significant to the courts? In other words, is it if I move out for a week and come back, or if I move out for a week, can I come back? Like, I guess it's up to her,
yeah,
but how does the court view that in terms of the legalities of saying you officially left?
yeah, that's a good one. There's really not a hard and fast rule, but you certainly get the feeling of if this guy's been gone for 6 months, like
Sure.
he's kind of out.
Right.
So you could leave for a week, come back. I'm always, I would work on the assumption that most people, they either own the house they live in, or they're on the lease if
Right.
they're renting, or their wife is one of those two categories.
Right.
So if that's the case, then I have an ownership right in that property, no matter what state I'm in.
Gotcha.
If my wife's on the title, even if I'm not on the title, we're married, I'm allowed to come and go to that house. And then same thing with a lease. She's on the lease, I'm on the lease, whatever. I'm allowed to come and go at that apartment or whatever I'm doing. So you're free to leave and come back. It's not like you left and now there's some rule that you're not
Right.
allowed to come back.
Gotcha.
So I think that's the balance, but you can't, there's no way to pretend what's going on in your life. If you're out and you're really never around,
Yeah.
then you're kind of out.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. I mean, some people come to us and they've been living apart for a year and they haven't filed for divorce yet. And that's okay too.
Right.
It just depends on how, and some people that's working out and it's not an issue, but
Right.
yeah, you can move out, you could go back, you could be kind of a little bit in between.
Gotcha.
Keeping the peace is always a good plan too.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So yeah, what would your third one be? Third piece of advice?
Well, yeah, I think the third, big mistake is just maybe a combination of kind of being in denial about it and then making bad choices on that. Thinking, it's sort of like one of these, like something you see in a TV show where she keeps saying she's divorcing you and there's 100 reasons and 100 things, and you keep saying, oh, we're going to get back together. And then like every day it's like another sign that you're not getting back together. Right. So I think part of that is just being in denial, not keeping the peace, which can go kind of hand in hand, where you're still fighting about it. You're combative. You're trying to hold on to a relationship that's just, long over. I think that's another big mistake is just the denial and the combative approach and the fighting about things that don't matter. And part of the whole idea of live together, move out, that I think makes sense here too, is it's easy for us to give advice because if you stay living together, that's good for saving your marriage. If you stay living together, that's good for starting your divorce. So there's no path where you move out, so right. I think move out can really be kind of the thing, but being in denial about it, causing fights, not following advice, refusing to talk to a therapist when clearly that would be helpful. Those all become kind of the common mistakes we see that they're all sort of interrelated,
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that covers sort of some of the top things and that you would recommend to either do or avoid.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, I have a ton of questions, which I sent you. I don't know if there's anyone, I don't know what order. I mean, we could just go down the list until, we get through time, but
let's just work through the list. That'd be good.
So in terms of success, one of the questions was, how do you, Attorney Boyer, measure success with a divorce case for your clients?
Yeah. So success is, it's a good one and it's important. At the beginning, my job, because I do all the initial interviews with clients, basically myself and my partner, we meet you from day one. We take the first phone call. We're dealing with the very, very beginning of all this, as far as the client dealing with a lawyer. And, the primary thing there with success is setting realistic goals. If you're coming into this and you've been married forever and you're talking about, I want to keep this and I want to keep that, we want to set the perspective that really that stuff is already half hers. So it's not a loss to say, well, I got to buy her out of the house and pay her half the house, or she's going to get part of my pension. So I think success is measured first when you're talking to an expert, that they can set the goals.
Right.
You know, it'd be like if I'm meeting with a doctor, he tells me I got cancer and he's telling me my treatment, he's going to be realistic about, well, you got to do this and this and this, and you'll be fine. I think that's where success is best measured, is what are the goals, and let's get a sense of what you think is going on, and then we'll tell you what's realistic, and then you know what to expect. It doesn't
Right.
sound so bad. You know,
So it's
now I
almost
know.
like setting realistic expectations to allow them to feel like they've been successful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, but success in the end is, you know, in a long-term marriage, you're probably going to end up with half, and that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But how that goes and what that means is a whole complicated kind of discussion. And that's where you just want, you know, you want the right advice, and you want to know what I should be expecting. Or if you're talking about custody, you know, what's success going to be looking like as far as custody of my kids? Should I expect half the time with them? Should I expect every other weekend? Or, you know, so we wanted to, I try to set that out first meeting.
Right.
Here's an overview. Here's what's realistic. Let's get rid of some of these myths, and your buddy at work is telling you some nonsense that doesn't make sense, or, you know, and a lot of what you're hearing might be true. And let's sort of look at, even if it's half, that's not the end of the world. And there's a right way and a wrong way on that too. So I think that's how you look at success in divorces.
Gotcha.
What should I be expecting? You know?
Okay. Well, speaking of assets and all that kind of stuff, that's one of the questions. If you leave stuff behind, you talked about leaving the house, you shouldn't do that, but let's say you do that, you leave a lot of stuff behind. Can the spouse that stayed behind, can they sell or damage anything you left behind?
Well, I mean, you can run into, there's kind of two stages here to me. There's before a divorce has been filed, and then there's after a divorce has been filed. So if we're talking about before, that's kind of the Wild West. You know, if no divorce has been started, there's no litigation, no one has jurisdiction over your lives. You're free to take your stuff. Your wife's free to take your stuff. It's all assumed to be kind of jointly owned. And, you know, the police are going to say, we don't want to be involved. I don't know about who took whose, you know, stuff, but it's a civil matter. So you do sort of run into the Wild West, which is a good reason not to move out unless you have to. Right. You don't want to worry about what's going to happen to my guitar, what's going to happen to my whatever prized possession I might have. So you do want to be careful of those things. Now, you know, most lawsuits are really just money. There's no, you know, if my wife takes my favorite guitar and destroys it, I can't get that back, obviously, but I can put a dollar value on it, and I could say, look, you owe me $500 for that guitar. And that's sometimes the best you can do on that sort of thing.
So is that part of divorce negotiation, or do you have to file something in addition?
Yeah, it would be part of the negotiation. So, you know, once you filed for divorce, you know, a common one we'll hear is, like, I haven't moved out, but my wife left, but she's kind of coming and going when I'm not there. Right. And stuff is disappearing. And you want to start off with, when there's trouble and you know a divorce is coming, you want to inventory, just, you know, like how the homeowners insurance companies will tell you, like, take a video of your whole house so you know what you have in case there's a fire, in case there's a burglary, because it's hard to remember. You think you know, but it's sort of hard to think of everything. Sure. Same thing with this. You just want to, what do I have? If I'm going to move out, or she's out coming and going, what is here? What are the items that I'm worried about, and what condition are they in, so that I can prove that to someone later. If I think this person is getting crazy, or going to be malicious, or try to take my stuff, try to destroy my stuff, I come home and my stuff's on the front lawn. You know, there's all kinds of nonsense. You know, emotions are high at the beginning.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of problems. Yeah.
So basically it's not something that you can't get the law involved even after the divorce is filed, right?
Well, once you get the divorce filed, so at that point, one of the first things you would do is a restraining order. You would put a court order in place that says property's not to be removed, things aren't to be changed. And then now I have someone violating a court order. That carries a lot more weight than a couple married people fighting about a guitar, you know. So now there's a divorce filed. Now I can do something about it. But again, it would go back to, I would need to be able to say what's missing or what's damaged. If I'm kind of not really sure what I have, right, I don't know if I have to go on. So you'd want to inventory, make sure you know what you have. And then once the divorce is started, definitely you could do something about that. I mean, people can't just go around destroying each other's things and taking each other's things. And
Now,
but it all comes down to money.
right,
It's
of
hard to
course,
get some.
yeah, of course,
It's hard to
of course.
get
Yeah.
your stuff back, but you can put a value on it.
So if there's a protective order put against the person that left, does that affect their ability to get their stuff? I assume that it does, but how does that affect getting their stuff and putting
Yeah.
value on it and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, once there's a protective order in place, now a judge can do something about it. If this person's sometimes in a divorce, there's just one person's just the bad actor. They're just the bad guy. They're doing all the wrong things. If this person's the bad actor, they're taking things, they're destroying things. A judge can do something about it because now there's a court order and there's a lawsuit filed. They can hit them with penalties. They can make them pay attorney fees for you having to go to court to fight about it. They can throw them in jail if they wanted to. So, do have a lot more available to you once a divorce has been started.
Gotcha. What if the protective order is on on the person that left because of allegations, let's say, true or
Right.
false, and we'll get into some of that, but does that affect their ability to go get their stuff or to be able to claim it, so to speak? Or you know what I mean? Does that affect anything at all?
Well, yeah, usually there's two kind of what you would call protective orders. There's a mutual one that's just for property and bank accounts and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
But then you can also get into personal protection orders, which is more like your wife claims you threatened her and you said you were going to kill her, and she gets a protective order that you're not allowed to talk to her, not allowed to be around her.
Mm.
That can definitely get in the way of, now I've got this court order that says I can't even go to my own house.
Right.
Or, that can interfere. You still have the remedy of you go to court, you say, hey, I need to go get my clothes, I need to get my stuff, and you get a time set up to go do that. And
okay, so you still have to, the best recourse is still to file something. Even if you have a personal protective order against you, you still need to take legal action in order to get your stuff or protect your stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right, let's jump into alimony. There was a lot of questions about that. So what happens if the person paying alimony stops working, retires, or is injured and they can no longer pay the alimony, or they just simply stop paying the alimony?
Right. Yeah. So alimony, let's assume you're in a Situation where you get divorced and you had to pay some alimony or spousal support, as some places call it that. Normally the agreement you're going to make, it's modifiable. So I can get it changed if there's a change of circumstances, if there's some major cause, I lost my job, or I'm making less money this year, which is a lot of people this year making less money, of course. Yeah. So you're usually going to be in a position where your spousal, the alimony is going to be modifiable. You can make an agreement where it's not modifiable, but that's unusual. We don't do a lot of that at our law firm because it's just hard to predict more than a couple of years out for people.
Sure.
So yeah, normally it's going to be a reason to get it changed, meaning you can go to your ex-wife and try to get an agreement, or you file something with the court and the court looks at it and they'll modify it. They'll say, all right, you're going to pay less money now because you're making less money.
What happens if in the unusual scenario where the woman is paying the alimony and she just, or I guess we could look at it as the man too, but they just decide, you know what, I'm just not going to work, so I don't have to pay you. Is that what recourse does the person receiving the alimony have to I guess, I don't know, force them to work? I'm not sure. Like, what do you do in that scenario?
Right. Yeah, that can happen. You certainly would look at what the facts are. So if this is somebody that's in their 40s and just isn't going to work anymore, obviously that doesn't make as much sense as if they're like in their 60s, where they might have a more legitimate reason to say, I got medical issues, or I'm kind of retirement age, but yeah, if this is somebody who's just maliciously just saying, I'm not going to work anymore, I'm not going to pay this, throw me in jail. That's not going to go well for them. I mean, you're really, you're going to end up standing before a judge, kind of explaining yourself and saying, I'm just going to quit. And that's kind of a nuclear option. I mean, you're not going to see most people get away with that. Typically, you're going to see, if they were ordered to pay it, they probably have a pretty good history of having worked. This is a person that it's pretty easy to tell what their value is, what kind of income they can earn. And then if they just decide to not work anymore, they say, I'm going to quit and go back to school or whatever, they're going to still owe that money and they're not going to be able to modify it, you know.
Gotcha. So,
If they
and
get,
one of the questions that came up is about tax law. And I guess I'm assuming alimony and spousal support is probably probably differs per state law, but I'm guessing all of them probably include or don't include alimony as taxable deductible income. Is that the case?
Right.
Are all the states like that?
Yeah, they changed. So in 2018, they changed that for federal law with the Tax Reform Act. They took, so it used to be that spousal support was tax deductible, and they took that away, and now it's not tax deductible. So now it's kind of like child support for adults, basically. You know, you know, and a lot of times you'll see a divorce case where, you know, mom has custody, mom really never worked, she's getting child support and alimony. Well, I mean, the way it is now, they're kind of the same thing. I mean, because neither one of them is tax deductible. So it took away a lot of the complication of all that, of looking at, all right, if I'm paying something that's tax deductible, you know, if I'm supposed to pay $1,000 a month, it's really only costing me $750 because I can deduct it on my tax. It got kind of rid of all those nonsense sort of discussions about taxes, which are sort of were theoretical anyways. So I think it's made it easier, really. It's a lot easier to understand that if I got to pay $1,000 a month, it costs me $1,000 a month.
Right.
You know, if I got to pay $1,000 a month and it costs me $750 because of my tax deduction, that's harder to get across to either one of the people. You know, either one of the people. When you're settling a divorce, it just doesn't sound that great that I can deduct it on my taxes, even though it helped. So they kind of took away all that. Now it's not tax deductible. So now I know if I'm paying $1,000 a month, it costs me $1,000 a month. You know, it makes it a little easier to discuss it.
Sure. So if there's an agreement in place and laws do change, what takes precedent, the agreement or the law?
Yeah. So the agreement. So there's people out there that are paying long-term spousal support or alimony, and they had a judgment of divorce that was done before 2018, and it's tax deductible. It's still tax deductible.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So they get to keep that right. And it looks like the way it's playing out, even when they modify it, they can still potentially keep deducting that, you know, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's, speaking of child support, we can jump into that.
Yeah.
It's sort of similar questions around that. Cause you know, like you said, it's kind of like, alimony is kind of like adult child support.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
How does someone not working that can affect the child support? So if I have to pay child support and my wife, I do.
Yeah.
To a large number that I don't even want to say out loud. If she decides she's going to quit her job, how does that affect, or does it affect my child support? Will it go up even though she can work?
Right. So one of the benefits of how child support's calculated is that it is based on, so it's heavily weighted towards what you make.
Right.
So then what she's doing and monkeying around a little doesn't always have a big effect on it anyway. So the first thing I would do if I was meeting with you is I would say, well, let's run some numbers. Let's plug in your income, plug in her income. And then second scenario, let's plug in your income and plug her in at 0 or something lower and see where this is really going. Cause I don't want to fight about something that isn't going to really matter, you know? Right. So that's kind of the first analysis with child support. But yeah, in general, someone quit, you know, a common one is they get divorced, you're paying child support, she gets remarried, you know, and a few years down the road, she's not really that interested in working. Her husband makes decent money. She kind of goes part-time, and you do have that argument available to you of this idea of potential income or somebody's ability to earn. You say, well, last year you made 60 a year and now you're only making 10.
Right.
And, you know, forget about the virus, because I'm not talking about that, but,
sure.
You know, you just decided to go kind of part-time. The court could potentially, they could still use her prior income. They could say, well, we're happy for you that you got remarried and you got this lifestyle, but we're not going to lower the child support or raise the child support because of what you did. We're going to assume you can still make 60 a year. So we're going to leave the child support the way it is, you know, as opposed to her coming in and saying, well, I got remarried and quit my job, I need more child support. You know, they're not going to, you can imagine that the judge isn't going to think that's great either. They're going to say, well, we're going to leave it the way it is. It's not really a reason.
Gotcha.
I think that, the bigger problem you run into with what I see is women that just have never really worked. There's a lot of underemployed women in our society. They start out raising kids and then they kind of don't get back into the workforce. And then next thing you know, it's 15 years later and you're getting divorced and you want to talk about how, well, when we first met, she was making 50 a year. But that was like 15 years ago. And that's not that useful now, and that gets frustrating a little bit because you think, well, she's got a college degree and she could make whatever. And you look at it like, yeah, but she has no work history. So who's going to hire her, And that, again, you just run some numbers, first of all, to see what we're really fighting about, because, you can typically assume somebody's able to make minimum wage, which is going to be 18 a year or so. And, if somebody's making 18 or 20 a year versus 35 a year, it's not that different in the formula usually. So you just say, okay, well, before we get too worried about what she's doing and it doesn't make sense, let's look at your bottom line. How is this affecting your child support number? And we won't fight about stuff that isn't going to make that big of a difference for you,
Gotcha. One of the things I missed in spousal support / alimony is someone gave a fairly specific example of the effects of filing first, and you recommended filing first, but this one is sort of specific in that this gentleman said in Pennsylvania, if the woman files first, she can drag it out after the 90-day cool-off period. Because she can petition to cut all support, where if the man files first, she can drag it out for up to a year and receive said support. So I guess it's in that limbo period from filing to actual settlement of divorce that there's support required during that time, or can be required. And so
there definitely can be,
is he correct in that filing first will affect that?
Yeah, filing first will affect it. Absolutely. It can, and it affects a lot of things. And then there's, the other part of that question, that there's a lot of screwing around with delay. A lot of jurisdictions have at least a 6-month waiting period.
Yep.
Especially when there's children, like in Michigan, there's 2 different waiting periods, whether there's kids or not kids.
Oh, okay.
So when you got kids, there's a 6-month waiting period. And in Pennsylvania, they have a waiting period. So in other words, pretty much every state, you can't just file and get divorced next month. You gotta wait. Some of them, it's up to a year. And it can be an issue. What's going to go on during that 6 months to a year, especially you got non-working spouse and she's looking to just have you pay all the bills and kind of, she's just going to coast and, feather the nest and just buy whatever she wants to do. You got to get all that locked down and under control at the beginning. Yeah. And how you do that is you get a court order in place that dictates, one word for it is a status quo order. You get something in place that says, here's the bills, here's what we're paying, here's what we're doing. And you kind of lay some of that out, because it's easy to take advantage of it, and it can be easy to delay it because there's delay just built in, in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. And I imagine it's probably even worse now with COVID.
Yeah, that's definitely caused some delays. It depends on what county you're in, how well that's going. There's, like in Michigan, there's counties, there's a county that borders another one, and one is like really high tech and all set, and the other one is just horrible. And, you think, oh, if I just moved 10 miles west, I could have been in a totally different court system. And it's taken a while. I think the upside that this virus has lasted this long is it's given the court system time to try to figure out a solution. When you're looking back to March and April, they didn't know what was going on or how long it was going to last.
Right.
Now they're kind of seeing now, all right, we got to figure this out, because we got thousands of cases being filed, and we can't just we can't put all this off till this is over. And so that's helped.
That leads me, I didn't write this one down. This is one is actually for me. So at the beginning of the lockdown, the kids stayed with me for like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
But because it was so unknown, I never filed anything in terms of support changes or modifications, because we just didn't know. But I had them from like beginning to mid-March to June. Can I go back to the court and petition to get credit for that time period?
Normally you cannot.
Ah.
So in other words, there's a law against modifying support for the past.
Mm.
So if I do, like what you describe, I had the kids a few months and I didn't file anything, I can't get credit for it.
So
or whatever other triggering, like let's say I lose my job and I got to get my support lowered. If I lose my job and I wait around for 5 months and then I file something with the court, I can't go back 5 months.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the only going back, the only retro would be if I file it in April and it takes the court till July to figure it out, they'll go back to April.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because that's their delay, not yours. But yeah, there's no way to go back.
Yeah. Oh well. Live and learn. So let's jump into false accusations. So one of the gentlemen asked about reclaiming expenses if they have to fight false accusations. Now I'm assuming that's, she said I did this and beat her and all this, and maybe she keeps doing it. Is there any recourse to either stop it or B, get some attorney's fees paid by her for making those accusations?
Yeah, you can. It's definitely possible. It depends on how it affects things. So the problem with divorce cases, first of all, is that you're free to say whatever you want to say about the other person. There's no lawsuit for defamation in a divorce case. So I can make up a bunch of lies about my wife and she can't sue me for defamation. Now that has other repercussions like that, that may make everybody think I'm a liar and it may show the court that I'm crazy, but she can't sue me just because I lied about things. And that's different than the rest of the world. If there wasn't a divorce and I just made up a bunch of lies about some person,
right,
they could potentially sue me for defamation. So there's that. But you certainly can, if you can show a pattern of your wife is just making things up about you and doing it maliciously and she's trying to get custody or she's trying to get you put in jail or whatever. Absolutely. I mean, that can carry a lot of repercussions. You can get into perjury kind of stuff where she's lying under oath, and that in and of itself is a crime. You can file a motion with the court, get the court to award attorney fees because you have to keep coming to court to defend things that you're able to prove are false. I think one of the problems is a lot of the times it's hard to prove that things are true or false because it's kind of her word against yours. She could say he threatened my life and he tried to kill me and get a protection order against you. And maybe none of that ever even happened. It could be all made up. So it's luckily there's not a large percentage of cases where that's going on, but it happens. It can be some nasty stuff.
So in terms of access to the children, if there is no separation agreement in place and they make an accusation, can they with, I guess the accusation leads to a protection order, because I would guess that would, how am I trying to say this? If they make an accusation but don't file a protection order, they can't withhold the children, right? And if there's no agreement in place.
Right. So withholding children really turns into, you can do that until I can get to court and do something about it. Usually, I mean, because if she's not letting me see my kids and the police aren't going to really get involved, which they usually won't, then I'm free to take them, but I can't get them, and she's free to keep them from me. And then that's where you need the court to just like put some, get a court order in place, get some specifics, and get things figured out that way, because it does be it becomes a tug of war otherwise until you can get an answer.
So then, if there are false accusations and you prove them to be false, does that affect custody against the person making the false accusation? Will they consider that?
It can, and it depends on the accusation. Some of the nastiest stuff I would say I've ever seen with custody and with kids is a mom with medical knowledge, like a nurse or something like that has an agenda, and they're making up malicious things. They're saying you touched our daughter, or you molested our daughter, and they know how to say it and how to make it sound real. And that can spin off into a whole investigation and a whole thing. And there's always this err on the side of caution with children, because they're not adults. That's about the worst you could expect, is somebody that's got the medical knowledge, knows how that world works. They know about reporting and abuse and all that. And they make up some stuff about you, and you spend 6 months trying to sort it out. That can be very frustrating, but yeah, in general, getting the right advice certainly helps all of that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to go back to child support. I missed one. Someone asked, how many people can a woman collect child support from for one child? I would think the answer is obvious, would be one, but
right, it's one.
And if they find some way somehow, maybe through threats or something, I mean, it sounds like they should just go to court. Like if they suspect that they're paying and they shouldn't be, go to court, right?
Yeah, anything more than one, it would be fraudulent. I mean, somebody's, you'd have to defend it through the courts. Yeah, for sure.
So we'll stick with sort of a child support, child custody. Have you personally ever gotten a father sole or primary custody due to a mother withholding, alienating, that type of stuff?
Yep. Yeah, we definitely have. It happens a lot. There's definitely a push, first of all, towards more of a shared custody kind of deal at this point. There's not a lot of laws that require shared custody, but the days of mom gets custody and dad can just do whatever are kind of over. Most men want to be way more involved in their kids' lives. So definitely, but we get custody for men all the time. You have to have the right facts,
right?
Because if you're talking about, I'm going to get custody of a child and he's going to live with me full time, and the mom is not agreeing to that, that's kind of extreme. It's really no different than the days of mom gets full custody and dad sees the kid hardly ever.
Gotcha.
Where we are today is we know the dad's not going to agree to have mom keep him full time, and mom's not going to agree to dad having him full time. But when you get into contested custody situations, a factor can be parental alienation. That term in and of itself is a little hard to follow because there's a lot of psychologists that try to tell you that doesn't exist, but there certainly can be a campaign of preventing you from seeing your kids and telling them, the person that prevents you from seeing their kids also isn't saying good things about you when you're not around, of course.
Right.
So it all goes. So there can definitely be that, that can lead to a situation where you end up getting custody. I mean, it wouldn't be just because of that, but it leads to the kids are not doing well in school. There's poor attendance. There's abuse, neglect kind of stuff. And this person is on a campaign of never letting you see them. And, it all goes hand in hand. You can definitely get, but yeah, we get custody for men all the time. You have to have the right facts.
So what's the best way to document something like alienation?
Well, I think you just, if you have any written statements on it, like text messages, emails, you hang on to those, or you just keep a journal, keep track of what the parenting time is, when you have the kids and when you're being denied the kids, and make sure you're documenting what you can if I'm supposed to have the kids on Friday and I get some nonsense about how I'm not getting them, maybe she won't tell me that in writing, but I can tell her in writing. I can say, hey, you just called me and you said you're not going to give me the kids because and just kind of lay out my narrative in an email. And now I have my version of it as it went. And that's a lot more believable than, me just saying what happened.
Gotcha. Okay. So document.
Yeah. Just document, and document doesn't have to be catching her putting stuff in writing, because people that are smart won't do that.
Yeah.
But you can put in writing what they just told you verbally.
Gotcha. So things like, and I know a buddy of mine went through this years ago. Chris Long, I'm calling you out. He was a big help to me when I first started going through this. And one of the things he said that he documented and journaled, and that was admissible. Like he submitted notebooks upon notebooks for, like 10 years worth. And that was all admissible.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a thing in evidence called present sense impression, where it's more believable if I wrote it down at the time it happened. The judge is going to tend to take my word for it more than me trying to tell some story about it 5 months later and I'm trying to remember. So like diaries, journals, emails to other, if I write to my buddy, I write an email to Chris, like, I can't believe what this lady she just did, even that can help me later, because it's always a few months later before you can get into court.
Yeah, for sure.
You say, yeah, I wrote this email to my buddy Chris, and this is what happened. And I remember exactly what happened because I wrote it all down. And yeah, I mean, I could have made it up, but judges know that that's kind of unlikely that you're going to write an email to your friend and lie about all of it.
Right.
I mean,
Especially if there's a pattern, I'm guessing too, right? If there's multiple.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So documenting you can do way more documenting yourself than you might at first kind of think, you know?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. One of my guys, Enrique, shout out to Enrique. He asked this pretty specific question.
Yeah.
Does abandonment of a previous child from a previous relationship affect custody with his children and her children, if you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it certainly can. It usually goes to, it's going to help convince your attorney, first of all, because they're saying, well, okay, this person's obviously got problems if their other kid got taken away or something happened. So it makes every allegation seem more believable, first of all, which is a good start.
So
instead,
you think he should reach out to the father who has the child and ask him for, I don't know, testimony, a statement, any of that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. We have, I think one of those clients is closed out, but we had 2 clients this year where that was a situation. One of them had custody of a kid, the father had custody, and then the mom, lost custody to him. And now our guy was fighting for custody from the same mom with a different kid.
Oh,
we represented both guys at the same time.
Huh.
So it definitely can help. It's not, it's not to say that what went on in the one case means everything in the other case, but it can give you insight into what went on. It gives you insight into what you're dealing with. There's mental illness, there's drug abuse, there's alcohol abuse, there's reasons that they took this person's kid away. And even if it's a different kid, different relationship, those reasons are going to pop up again. And it helps you kind of figure all that out, which is because there's a lot to figure out, when you're trying to deal with custody issues is a whole thing. So yeah, it definitely helps that way. And we saw that firsthand this year when we had 2 guys, 1 mom, and trying to, we had her coming and going.
So what was the outcome? Did get custody for both guys?
Yeah. The one guy got custody. The other one got into a weird jurisdiction fight about how there was some Grand Traverse County, there was up North Michigan stuff going on and Ohio stuff going on. And,
oh, wow.
But in the end, he was able to, long story short, he was able to get a lot of parenting time, which started turning into custody. I mean, this lady just can't do it.
Yeah.
So even though the judge didn't say, yeah, I'm giving you custody, it's kind of heading that way. She just can't take care of kids. She can't take care of kids,
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
So, yeah, I think that one is just, persistence is the rule there. You just got to stick with it. Don't give up,
Well, speaking of, not the best partners, let's talk about some of the factors that can affect a divorce, such as infidelity. And I know that speaks to fault, no fault. And I got sort of a specific question about that, but let's first talk about that, or pregnancy with another while still married.
Right.
How does any of that factor? And I'm guessing it probably matters about fault, no fault.
Right. Definitely comes into play with fault or no fault. A lot of states are getting away from fault. It's totally changed. I mean, it used to be long ago, 1940s, you'd have to prove fault or you couldn't get divorced. You'd have to prove abandonment, abuse, all these words that start with the letter A. If you couldn't prove any of that stuff, you had to stay married, which was weird. And that goes back to, a lot of our laws are kind of based on England, and that's how England did it. So then we've gone total 180 to where now fault doesn't even really matter anymore, which is maybe not a good approach either. Some states, I know Michigan is very no fault. There's no fault auto insurance. There's no fault divorce. They're kind of no fault. They think nothing's anybody's ever, anybody's fault, which is maybe born out of the right idea, but it doesn't really make sense all the time. I mean, a lot of times in a divorce, clearly it's somebody at fault. I mean, there's problems. So you'd want to get specific advice about your situation. Is is it worth pursuing this fault type of case where I got to prove stuff, or do I just say, yeah, I'm just getting divorced? You know, because in most states you're running into, we're just getting divorced. We know we don't like each other, and you said it's because I'm cheating, and I said it's because you won't sleep with me, and you know, who knows? You know, I think fault can become kind of circular logic a lot of times.
Gotcha.
You know?
Is there a, do you know, I don't know if you would know off the top of your head. I'm just curious. I haven't looked it up myself, but the number of states that are fault versus no fault?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Most of them are, I don't know the number, but most of them have gotten away from fault.
Is that, and so it sounds like that's a push to basically, you know, nationwide is marching to no fault.
Yeah, I think the courts just don't want to deal with it. They know that you could spend 2 hours talking about what you don't like about your wife, and she could spend 2 hours talking about what she doesn't like about you.
Right.
And nobody's the wiser at the end of those discussions, unless there's abuse or neglect or crazy stuff. But if it's just, you know, she doesn't do the dishes and she won't clean the house, you know, it's whatever with that stuff. I think the judges have just sort of, I think over the years, and the legislators have just said, this is just, there's no point to this.
So if it's fault, if it's no fault, in terms of divorce, does that also affect custody? Like, in other words, if it's no fault,
Yeah,
divorce,
it does.
It's no fault for custody. And so if she was cheating, even if she got pregnant, it doesn't matter because it's a no fault state.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter. It's such a small factor. You know, looking at who should get custody isn't going to have a lot to do with who's cheating.
Gotcha.
I mean, in a weird way, the person who you know, the person who she was cheating on feels very hurt and they're upset about it. But does it really tell you anything about how she's going to be as a mom? I mean, the kids might not even know she's cheating.
Right. So
then that's where it gets a little weird, where you're like, well, this doesn't really affect custody and who should have custody. If they're up to things in their private life that the kids maybe don't even know about, doesn't affect them, you know, I think that's where that comes from. The fault just isn't really a factor in custody. Now there's, you know, they can look at moral fitness, you know, as part of a custody factor. They can look, you know, a lot of states have that. So it's there, but it's not going to be the driving force to determine.
Gotcha. It would just be another piece to the puzzle, perhaps.
Yeah, right. It's another factor. It's part of the narrative.
Gotcha. Someone was very, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he had a strong opinion about no fault. And he asked if it's constitutional, a no fault divorce, and if anyone has ever challenged it.
Yeah. I mean, not that I don't know of anyone challenging it. You know, like I know Michigan's a no fault state, for example. A lot of the Midwest is, meaning, and really what that means is I don't need a reason to get divorced, but fault type of things can be a factor, because, you know, abuse could be fault.
Right.
You could say, well, that's part of it. But really in the no fault jurisdictions, which is a lot of states, this is basically not going to affect things, you know. But I haven't seen anybody challenge it on a constitutional basis. I think the problem with that is that if you're talking about U.S. Constitution, that this is all left up to the states. This is in the states. So you'd have to attack a state constitution about a state law, and that's harder to do.
That makes sense. Okay. Let's move on to finances and assets when divorcing. So a gentleman asked if no one has yet to file. Well, he has not filed. Neither has his wife, but he has a large amount of savings. They have a large amount of savings, joint account. Yeah. If he removes any of that money before filing, is he responsible? Is she entitled to half of that once they do file?
Yeah, I mean, I think that becomes a duration kind of question. You know, like if I do that a week before divorce has started, I'm probably accountable. If I do it a year before divorce has started, I might not be. You know, we'll see a lot. You know, a lot of divorces are born out of fighting about finances and fighting about spending. Yeah. One person's a spendthrift, and the other one is a tightwad.
Right.
And they can't get out. They can't get on the same page. Yeah. Or one of them might be reasonable, and one of them just spends way too much money. And that can be an issue, and it can be extreme. I mean, we've seen people that have basically spent down like their entire retirement account for no real reason, and now they're getting divorced, but that's been going on for years. So it's hard to kind of, it's like once you knock the glass of water over, it's hard to put the water back in the glass. Like you just sort of say, look, I don't know, this money's gone now.
Yeah.
So if I take the money a month before we get divorced, or, I'm doing that kind of stuff, that's kind of shady. And I can assume I'll probably not get away with that.
And does the court would look negatively upon that?
Yeah. They'll look back and they'll, you'll get guys who'll say, well, what if I, put my house in my brother's name, or what if I, get, and I mean, that's all clearly being done for fraud or deception. And, but if it just happens, I took some money out of the bank and went and bought some stuff and did some things, and I didn't know we were getting divorced.
Right.
That's, that's different. So it definitely, that's a very fact specific kind of question.
Right.
But I've certainly seen plenty of divorces where if it's been kind of recent, weird activity, out of the ordinary, anything out of the ordinary going on, you can expect a complaint about it and you could be facing problems. I'm going to take my $20,000 car and sell it to my buddy for $5,000. You're like, yeah, that's probably not going to work,
Gotcha. So how far back will the court look?
I don't think there's any wrong answer, but you start getting beyond a couple of years and it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
Just going to say, look, you stayed married to this guy. You knew what was going on. I think you could be in a situation where it's a couple of years ago, but they didn't know about it till now. I mean, that could, like the retirement account, for example, like let's say we're getting divorced and I think my wife's got $30,000 in her 401k, come to find out she cashed it out and I didn't even know somehow. We filed separate returns or something. That's different. But, in general, if it's been a few months before, it'll be considered. If it's been years, nobody's going to listen to it.
Gotcha.
I mean, there's guys that'll come in here and women have kind of ruined their lives. I mean, they've blown through money, they've done, and there's not a way to really fix that. For one thing, the money's gone and and the woman doesn't make any money. That's why she spent all the money.
Right.
So even if you said, yes, let's get you back the money, I don't know where it would come from. And, you do run into those kind of situations.
Well, speaking of low income, a couple guys asked if attorneys have ever used like an income-based fee structure, and I can't imagine that would be.
Yeah, but I don't know anybody doing that. I mean, there might be state funded, guys that are, if there's somehow they're like legal aid, legal services, or there's certainly better versions of legal aid in some states where it's not just, some attorney doesn't know what they're doing. It's actually a decent structure. But yeah, in general, you end up just kind of paying. It's not based on what you make. It's based on what it takes.
Sure.
Understood. Like hiring any other service, you're just sort of having to hire based on what it takes, and your income isn't relevant to what they charge,
And it's so what I mean, I guess it's probably, like you said, different for each state, but the options, if they don't have the funds, sounds like is like a legal aid type of thing. It's
legal aid. There are some states, like I know Michigan is one of them. So is Illinois. There's things where you can hire an attorney on a more limited kind of basis. So it keeps the cost down.
Gotcha.
You're not paying them to sit in court for 4 hours and do nothing kind of stuff. And we've been able to start doing that the last few years here because they changed our court rule in Michigan. But it's possible to hire somebody and not fully hire them in the traditional sort of pay by the hour, blank check kind of deal.
Gotcha.
So that's worth checking into with your specific, the attorneys that are in your area, what they're doing. It's kind of an unbundling of services is kind of how I would describe it.
Okay.
You say, well, I want to hire you to do this, but I don't need you to do that. And the law is changing and allowing more and more of that.
Okay. Interesting. So one of the guys, and I didn't capture it on the list. I apologize. One of the guys, I remember it just popped in my head. He asked about how do you, and I think it's probably an easy answer, but how do you stop an attorney from calling you and sort of frivolous calls and billing you for them? So like, hey, are your kids doing well? Or I don't. Yeah. Right. I think it just. I guess the question is, how do you stop it? And I would assume you just tell them to knock it off. And then B, do you have any recourse to go back if he does charge you for stuff that is frivolous?
Yeah, you do, and I think this is a good point of knowing you gotta get a sense of who you're hiring in the first place.
Right.
It's a good discussion to have at the first meeting.
Gotcha.
Meaning, like, how do you bill? How do I know what it cost? Like with my law firm, we do a statement every 2 weeks. You get a very detailed billing. There's lawyers that don't ever do statements. They don't ever. They just say, they hold their finger up to the wind. Oh, it was $2,000. And you don't ever know what's going on. And then there's, of course, people that are in between. So I think you want a law firm that is on, like here we have a full-time office manager. We have a billing assistant. This isn't like Joe Schmo that writes it on a piece of paper and gives it to you. So I think you want to know who you're hiring going into it. Is this someone that, am I going to get a statement monthly? Am I going to get a statement weekly? Because you can't complain about frivolous charges if you don't know about them.
Right. True. Very true.
For step one. So I think that's a good thing to talk about at the first meeting. And it's hard to do. Men don't like to get into all that. And, we like to, men are more they see it and they buy it. That's kind of their deal. Yeah. And you got to kind of put on your, right side brain a little, be more creative with the questioning at the initial interview. Like, how does this work? How am I billed? I know you work by the hour, but is it every email, every phone call? And I think you just get into that and you'll have a better sense.
Gotcha.
And then if you're getting a monthly statement, make sure you actually look at it.
Go through it.
Is it accurate? And talk about it. They're willing to work with you. They want clients to be happy.
Sure.
So I think the hardest part of that question is you don't know. Some lawyers you don't know till way at the end, and all of a sudden they're talking about thousands of dollars, and you're like, wait a minute, what does that mean? And then it gets to be kind of hard to sort out.
Sure. So speaking of good lawyers, I know you only practice in Michigan. Is that the case? Do you have connections? Is there a network of people like yourself, firms like yours that communicate and kind of help men, or is it just solely state by state just because of licensing and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's only state by state. Part of what goes on with state by state is that, like, we're called A.D.A.M.
Yep.
In Michigan, in Ohio, for example, you can't call it that. The law firm would have to be Boyer and Smith, or something. It has to be the names of the lawyers. So there are states. There's enough states in the country that don't allow a name of a law firm.
Okay.
So you can't use A.D.A.M. in some of these. So we've always just stayed Michigan only. But I know, for us, like the obvious thing, well, let's go to Ohio. It's right across the, it's an hour drive from you. And you can't call it A.D.A.M. in Ohio, which is weird.
That is weird.
So that alone gets in the way of having like a national thing. Now you could have a national law firm that's called Boyer and Midgard or whatever the names of the lawyers are.
Right.
But yeah, the best advice I could give on wherever you are, Pennsylvania, whatever state, you just got to look at who does. You want an expert, who does divorce and family law only.
Right.
You don't want some jack of all trades guy, or my uncle said to talk to his buddy. You don't want any of that.
Right.
You want the divorce family law attorneys. It's like, that's all we do. If you had a bankruptcy case, I don't do that stuff. I wouldn't know anything about it. Personal injury, I don't know anything about it. You want somebody that's very specific. There's a national website you can look at for wherever you are. That's it's called AAML.org. So it's American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, AAML.org. And that will give you, those guys are experts.
Gotcha.
They have to pass a test and take these like credentials to be part of that. So if you look in your state, your city, and find one of them, they might be more on the expensive side, but they're going to be a good source of information, and they could refer you to someone else, or they'll take your case or whatever. So AAML.org is a good thing to look at if you're just, friend of yours is somewhere else and, whatever might be going on.
Gotcha. All right. Well, so that's pretty much it. I'm positive that we'll get more questions will be generated. So I'll reach back out. I hope maybe once a month. I mean, whatever you can do. Again, I just really appreciate the time. I think this is going to be very, very helpful to a lot of men. So I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. Let's do it again. It's good stuff.
All right. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they are in the state of Michigan and need an attorney?
Yeah, best bet. They can call me. The phone number is 248-356-2326.
Gotcha.
Call that number. Go on the website, adamdivorcelaw.com. Get to me through there.
I'll post. I already posted the A.D.A.M Facebook page in
Cool.
in my podcast group. Is there any other YouTube or any other social media that you would like me to post?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel that would be good for people to check out. I post about once a week on there.
Okay.
And they're just kind of frequently asked questions is what I base it on. If you go to my website, you can find the link to the YouTube channel. And they're little just, questions like, should I move out, or
Gotcha.
how to avoid mistake, the kind of stuff we've been talking about, little
Awesome.
5-10 minute advice videos. It's all, it's YouTube. It's all free, of course,
Yep.
And it's not really Michigan specific. I kind of stay away from that.
Gotcha.
A lot of the advice applies to everybody.
Gotcha.
I'm surprised at how that holds true. Like there's a divorce lawyer that I've learned a lot from. He's in North Carolina, and I got one of his books, and man, like a 300-page book, there was maybe one page that didn't apply to Michigan. I was amazed. I thought it would be, and they're totally different from us.
Yeah.
But he stuck to kind of the normal, like, don't move out and file first, and,
Sure.
and things that didn't have anything to do with North Carolina and their crazy legal system. He stuck with just common sense advice, and that's what a lot of my YouTube stuff is. It's advice. It's not necessarily Michigan only kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Well, I'll definitely post that in the group, and the guys will check it out. I appreciate it. Thank you again for your time, and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Yep. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Since my separation in July of 2019, I have done an incredible amount of work on myself. I've had many different therapists, life coaches, and went through different programs. I've taken all that I've learned and put it into my own program called Forged by Fire. If you are interested in having me help you navigate your divorce, please hit my website, risingphoenixdivorcecoach.com. I look forward to working with you.